Adam Collins here with Geoff Lemon for the final word. All Out Cricket in conjunction with Kookaburra Cricket in front of the beautiful cathedral here at Adelaide in the parklands here. And it's a dead rubber, but you would never know it from the lead up to this test match, Geoff. We've had wholesale changes to the Australian side. We've had a scandal with the South African side. And the winner of this test match can go to fourth in the world. Gee, that's what they came here for, to go fourth in the world.
All about fourth, isn't it? Lazarus came fourth and he did all right. So, look, I hate the term dead rubber. I've gone on about this at some length. It's a test match. You're playing a test match for your country. It matters. There's nothing unimportant about it ever. But this one really does have some spice about it. They're fired up. The South Africans are mad. They don't want revenge on the Australian team, but they kind of want to stick it to the Australian media and public, those of them who've been against the South Africans. And the Aussies have, well, so many debutants and they really need to prove a point.
Yeah, let's unpack this. So there are 5 changes. The oldest man in the Australian cricket team now is David Warner at age 30. So 2 blokes have came back. Matthew Wade's got the gloves, somewhat controversially selected ahead of Peter Neville, the first choice wicketkeeper. And Jackson Bird has been given the gong at Adelaide Oval ahead of Chad Sayers, a South Australian, after he missed out in Hobart, which is his home ground last week. Talk us through that, Geoff.
Okay, so yeah, in Hobart, the South Australian Joe Mennie gets picked ahead of the Tasmanian Jackson Bird. Come to Adelaide, the Tasmanian's in the South. I almost said South American. He's not South American. That would be a totally different Chadwick Sayers. I'm disappointed because I just wanted to make puns about Adelaide Oval, but I cannot do that anymore, and I'm really feeling hard done by, to be honest, by the selectors. But Mark Waugh's name is up on the scoreboard at the moment, so he's obviously in there reliving old memories. Oh, I remember the time I made 30 at Adelaide.
We can remember the time he saved a test match here against South Africa in 1997, but I digress. There are 3 debutants as well. We mentioned that before, all under the age of 25, or 25, 24 and 20 respectively. Let's start with Matt Renshaw. Steve Smith said in his column overnight that he wouldn't have even recognised Matt Renshaw had he seen him walking into the change rooms. He needed to be prompted who he was. It's quite an extraordinary selection, really, given his lack of first-class experience, but he has banged the door down with Sheffield Shield tons.
Although definitely missed the opportunity to play a bunch of pranks on the Australian captain who wouldn't have known who he was, thus would have got away with it. Yeah, look, he just performed so well in that audition round, made 100 and a half century, and given Joe Burns was so flighty, he failed twice in that Shield match himself after double failures at Hobart, they probably made the right pick at the time just to give Burns a little bit of time out. I think he'll be back at some stage, and Sean Marsh may come back in a couple of tests when he's healed up, but in the meantime Renshaw's got the chance. Excited to see what he does with it.
Yeah, you mentioned the audition. No one put in a better audition than Peter Hanscom from Victoria last week. 215 in front of the Australian captain. It's his time, really, isn't it? He's the right age, the right pedigree, captained Australia A over the winter, an excellent first-class record. He's the banker out of those 3, isn't he?
And he's also a guy who's got a reputation for being a good player of spin. Now, some players with that reputation in the past have gone to India and still been completely humiliated, but they've got that tour of India coming up in February, and if they could have a guy in the middle order who could manage against spin along with Steve Smith who can, it would just strengthen things up so much.
And the 3rd debutant is Nick Maddinson. So here, Maddinson was known to be a bit of a basher and a crasher, plays with Steve Smith at New South Wales, but Smith says he's developed his game now. He'll need to, but he's batting, and crucially Smith said he's batting at number 6. He wants him to be a bit of a match winner, a bit of a game turner.
Yeah, and they've completely changed their rationale that we must have an all-rounder at 6 so we have support for the bowlers. They've got rid of that. They've gone back to the days where, some not too shabby players batted at 6, Damien Martin, Michael Hussey, Darren Lehman himself, at that position to save things. I don't know if Maddinson's the pick for it. He's not necessarily a player you can rely on to dig in. He can be a match changer in the right circumstances, but they need support. So I hope he goes well, but, I'm not entirely convinced they've got the right call.
It'll be fascinating to watch those 3 blokes go around. As for South Africa, they're happy as they could be, winning the series 2-0. They could be the first team to beat Australia 3-0 on home soil in the history of Test cricket, but they've had their own controversy. Lollygate, Faf du Plessis in the dock for ball tampering. He got off to the extent to which he's playing here, but lost 100% of his match fee, and they've kicked off today at the media conference, Geoff.
Well, yeah, he really had a good old go at the media conference. He said he's very angry about being found guilty. He thinks he's been made a scapegoat for something that wasn't really relevant. Basically, that there's nothing in the charge that shining the ball is something every player does. Eating things on the field is something every player does. And also Haroon Lorgat, the boss of Cricket South Africa, has come out and said there's no definition in the law for what artificial actually means. Is something you're eating artificial? Is it a chemical substance you apply to the ball? In that, if you're going going along those lines, cricket pants are artificial. As somebody said on Twitter, they don't grow out of the ground. You've got to polish the ball on your trousers, so that's artificial. Do we ban everybody for using trousers? Do they have to take them off? Do they polish it on their bare thigh? I don't know. You can bleed on the ball. You can hock up phlegm on the ball. You can pick your nose and rub it on the ball. That's all fine apparently. Bodily fluids, great, not hygienic, but allowed. So what's wrong with confectionery? I don't know. I think it's such a massive beat up, and I think hopefully if something good comes out of it, they'll refine that law and make it clearer for everybody from now on.
Speaking of the ball, we're going to have Kookaburra's Communications Director with us in just a moment. But I guess for South Africa's perspective, if they can win this Test match, they win this series 3-0, but they're going to name their team at the toss tomorrow.
I'm Peter Hanscom, and what I look for in a bat is a very nice pickup. Looking for a weight around 2.9 for the long format and around 2.10 for the shorter format, so I can try and muscle the ball over the fence a couple of times. This summer I'll be using the Kahuna bat. I like them because they've got a nice rounded face and also some really big edges, so when you time the ball it comes off sweetly.
As promised, we've got Shannon Gill from Kookaburra here. He runs the show with these pink balls they're playing with, which makes this a very exciting test match. The second time we've had a pink ball test match in Australia and the third time in total. Fundamentally, Shannon, what is the difference between the ball from this year to last year?
Oh yeah, and a main difference from last year is that last year we had a white and green seam. Player feedback was that they couldn't see the ball as well, they couldn't see the seam as well, because the contrast wasn't great enough. I.e., when we have a red ball, we have a white seam which provides great contrast. So we went down and got a black seam. Black seam provides much greater contrast to the pink ball. This was trialled in Shield cricket in February with good feedback. Since then, all our pink balls we've made with the black seam. It's been used in first-class cricket across the subcontinent during the winter, and was also used in the second ever day-night test between Pakistan and West Indies in October. So that's the ball for now.
Now, let's just go through that. So the last test match they played with the pink ball here was all over in 3 days, but the one they used with this ball in the UAE went for 5 days. So the fact that we've got a pitch out here, which we saw today, with I think 2 millimetres less grass than last year, should that materially affect the game in your view from a ball perspective?
I think the pitch conditions will determine the length and the nature of the match more than the ball does. So what we saw in Dubai was that a truckload of runs day 1, day 2, day 3. Pakistan 3 for 579, West Indies reply with 375. Then it turned around. Bishu from the West Indies took 8 for 43, which apparently, there was a lot of talk that spinners couldn't grip the ball. Well, he clearly was gripping the ball quite well. And then the West Indies made a fair fist of the chase, but it turned into a bowler's match on the last 2 days. A little bit like we see in regular 5-day test cricket.
Let's just go through the balls here. You've got another ball in your hand here which is more purple in colour. Just explain the distinction between the lacquer that's needed for this ball and the one you could use with that.
So this ball doesn't see the light of day very often, in fact, if at all. But this is the pink leather that sits underneath the coating of the ball. This is what it would be like if we didn't put any coating on it and we just used it as is and put the normal lacquer that we put on a red ball. That would behave just like a red ball and play just like a red ball. But there's one important problem. You can't see it under lights. So what we need to do is put the coating on it so it can be seen under lights. So that is the difference. And that's how there's going to be some differences in the way it plays, because it doesn't shine the same as what it would be for a normal red ball.
So it's just becoming more normalised. You feel considerably more, I guess, comfortable in your surrounds than a year ago when Kookaburra were trialling this for the first time. It was kind of a one-off, and if it didn't work then it may not have continued as a concept. Now it's a bit more established, isn't it?
Look, I think what we're seeing is every time we play a match there's some sort of feedback that we get and we improve it. And I think I've been asked the question before, is this the final iteration of the ball? It probably won't be, no. But that's not to say that it's not up to scratch or it's not up to a certain standard. It's like everything, we will keep making minor changes and minor alterations, which on the surface you might not even see, to make it a better product.
And what about the teams? Last year, Australia were fairly forceful in their language either side of the test match. They were supportive of the concept, but probably not getting skittled for a couple of hundred in their first innings. And likewise, the South Africans weren't that keen on it beforehand. Where are they at now on match eve?
I think the feedback we've had from players and the Australian players is that the ball is improving, which is a good sign. That's all we can do at this point. South African guys who haven't had as much experience with it, the couple that I've spoken to have had pretty good attitude towards it, and they think that, well, yes, it's different, but once we get going, it's just like any normal cricket ball. So that's a good attitude, I think, to have.
Yeah, it certainly is. Thanks to Shannon Gill for joining us today from Kookaburra. Adam Collins, Geoff Lemon behind the camera there for all that cricket. We'll look forward to being back with you after this test match. Let's hope it's a good one.